Hello and welcome to today's webinar on Ultima IAConnect. My name is Elder D. Araujo and I work as a Senior Technical Consultant within the Intelligent Automation practice here at Ultima. So looking at the agenda and topics for discussion, we'll spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about the common automation challenges, specifically those around RPA, including RPA solutions which are hosted in the cloud. We'll touch upon areas of information security and also the challenge around Citrix and remote session automation. I'll also provide you with some more information on Ultima's IAConnect solution, what it is, some of the high-level features including functionality, and we'll also cover some of the onboarding challenges which are common to most clients when venturing into RPA and how these points are addressed by IAConnect. Finally, we'll take a look at the demonstration of the IAConnect solution, and to close the session, we will have an opportunity for questions and answers based on the content you have seen today. So starting off with common automation challenges, we have three very distinct areas which we'll discuss in more detail. The first challenge is that with robotic process automation, there are normally a long list of steps required for onboarding virtual workers. This can often take days, if not weeks, to get all of the necessary infrastructure changes ready and the hoops around change management. Main areas like provisioning of service accounts, group policy, VPN connectivity, firewall and routing are just a number of areas which have to be explored to get virtual workers in a position to communicate effectively with resources within your domain. RPA often requires buy-in from various departments of the business, including upper or senior management, to gain momentum. Where RPA solutions are hosted in the cloud, such as for autonomy, this also introduces another complexity which ties in with the next point around information security. With information security, the main concerns here are how VPN endpoints communicate from the cloud back to your on-premises, how data is treated between these endpoints, and everything within the perimeter of your network. There may also be concerns around the utilization of non-corporate builds accessing business systems and other resources on the network. RPA in the cloud has both of these challenges, but it does also have several benefits, such as affordability, low overall cost of ownership, scalability, flexibility to provision based on demand, which can lead to a potential for greater return on investment due to its low cost model. For those of you who are already using RPA, you may already be familiar with the challenge around automating specific processes or applications over a Citrix or remote desktop session. The way an RPA platform works is by identifying object elements inside target applications, which then go on to perform various functions to populate or extract data from fields to get a desired result. This is all done through a combination of interacting with operating system APIs and web-based document models. However, in the case of automating over Citrix or remote desktop, this functionality is lost since all the virtual worker would see is a picture. Therefore, all interactions from that point forward will be using a technique known simply as surface automation. Now, the problem with surface automation is that this method relies heavily on visuals such as screenshots and OCR technology to determine areas on the screen where UI elements are no longer available. Development time is increased by 2, possibly 3 times compared to processes developed natively with an RPA product. You'll also find that these types of processes are extremely prone to error. So as you'll now understand, the automation of processes can be problematic due to the way in which virtual desktop technology displays applications to the end user. This will invariably increase the cost of Citrix-based automation workloads, introduces a form of complexity, devalues the return of investment, and potentially results in organizations avoiding automation of Citrix workload altogether. This is where I'd now like to talk to you about Ultima's IAConnect solution and how we address the many challenges which we've talked about so far. So what is IAConnect? IAConnect can work with your RPA solution to allow automating over remote channels and interact with various applications. Anything which you can currently automate today can now be achieved remotely with IAConnect, such as automating processes using Office Suite, web browsers, and accessing any Windows 32 applications. As you can see from some of the points on screen, this solution essentially removes the pain associated with RPA over remote channels. We can increase the onboarding speed necessary to run RPA in your environment remotely and enable quick proof of concepts to be performed. Looking at the features and functionality of IAConnect, the first section focuses on what we call low disruption. So getting up and running with IAConnect is not overly complex. There are a few options on how we can launch IAConnect, whether this can be a standalone executable or presented on Citrix as a desktop or published application. This also utilizes the existing user credentials when performing tasks, so it removes the need for any additional service accounts or permissions being granted. With IAConnect, we can also extend RPA functionality, utilizing Office Suite, web browsers, or any other Windows 32 application. There is also functionality to utilize OS file system and environment automation, including reaching those on-premise systems like Active Directory, Exchange, or even Skype over a remote session. IAConnect is also extensible, which means we can interact with a PowerShell automation engine if required, and also dynamically compile and execute programming code like C# or VB.NET. I'd also just like to point to the right of the screen, you can see the Citrix Ready badge. So Ultima have a long-standing partnership with Citrix, which has allowed us to develop this solution. And because of this, the Technology Partner Program has certified that IAConnect is compatible and trusted to enhance Citrix solutions and this is why it's been approved as Citrix Ready. So let's take a look at some of the onboarding and security challenges. RPA solutions, including those which are hosted in the cloud, all typically require a long list of steps to achieve what we call onboarding. You'll see from the list of steps on the left-hand side that there are numerous activities which need to take place, such as configuring VPN connectivity, routing, firewall, authentication, patching, and the installation of applications which are required to exist on a virtual worker for use by an RPA engine. IAConnect, on the other hand, simplifies this and addresses the challenge by minimizing the time needed to onboard and start automating over a remote channel. IAConnect works over a standard user Citrix session, utilizing existing credentials for authentication, and therefore removes the need for additional firewall rules, joining to the domain, and all of the associated actions which are seen on the left-hand side. As we touched upon earlier, an RPA platform works by identifying object elements inside a target application. And as we know, this functionality is lost when it comes to a Citrix or remote session, since all the virtual worker can see is a picture, hence surface automation. In this example, using Excel, automated processes using surface automation could start to fail if a few things were to change, such as hidden columns, resized columns, data being located off screen, data that is even reordered. But the biggest challenge with Excel is that everything looks the same, which means that you could easily confuse one cell for another. If a new version of Excel were to be rolled out, you would immediately be faced with the fact that your automation would need to be updated as the process is based on the version it was first developed on. Now, these are all factors which could cause a process developed by surface automation to fail. These types of processes will need additional steps and the use of OCR technology to validate and ensure that the data being processed is correct and consistent. IAConnect changes all of this by allowing you to have direct interaction with applications over a remote channel. This means that automated processes, which would normally have to have extensive checking built in, will no longer fit the category of being prone to error. There are no dependencies on the version of Excel being used. It won't be affected by upgrades or changes to layout, even column resizing, for example. Speed of execution is vastly improved and rivals that of native application modeling within RPA. Essentially, the whole experience is exactly the same as a virtual worker performing actions as if the robot were present on the end system. So let's just take a quick look at the solution as a whole. Now, the IAConnect solution allows you to work with any RPA vendor, whether this is Autonomy or Blue Prism, for example. And the decision logic which is built into automations can either query whether this process needs to run locally or remotely. The output is then passed through an IAConnect DLL and onwards to a virtual worker. Now, all of this happens on the RPA engine, and should the decision be to run locally, then the virtual worker would simply process the instruction. However, in the event that the process needs to run remotely, then the virtual worker would initiate a remote session and send all of the actions which need to be performed through the remote channel to the IAConnect executable on the remote system. All of the actions performed are then directly interacted with applications present on the remote system, with all relevant inputs and outputs captured and passed back via the virtual channel for processing. And this method of communication is bidirectional. I'd now like to show you a demonstration of IAConnect in action. Key actions in the video are annotated, but at a high level, the process you're about to see is based on a joiners, movers, leavers process where we are retrieving a work item from ServiceNow, which is one of the examples of a service management solution in the cloud. Now, it's not to say that this couldn't be kicked off by a number of other methods, such as a web portal, email, or even a schedule. Key inputs are supplied. This is then sent for approval, and once approved, the process kicks in and automates a new door entry application for a user. At this point, the automation engine receives the instruction, prepares the workflow for execution, and once a remote session is established, all work activity is then performed remotely, with the final task being the ServiceNow ticket updated to reflect the actions performed. A variety of applications are used, such as Word, Outlook, and a custom Windows 32 app. On the left-hand side, we have a cloud instance of ServiceNow. And on the right-hand side, in the background, we can see our automation platform, which is Blue Prism, which is also hosted in the cloud. So the user chooses a workflow which they wish to process, and the example shown here is that for a new user, where they would like a door entry process to be completed. The user then enters the key inputs required, including the level of access required, and this task has now been passed over to a manager for approval. So here we're just validating some of the variables in terms of the inputs applied. The manager then approves the request and hits the update button. Now, by hitting the update button, this essentially kicks the process off, and the automation engine then starts to process the request. However, for the purpose of demonstration, we have chosen to keep the automation engine in a pending state to allow you to understand what is happening behind the scenes. So the automation engine then retrieves the ticket and starts to process the request. And as you can see on the right, all the data is extracted and stored as variables within the automation workflow. From this point, the automation engine now connects to Citrix Storefront and initiates a remote session. Now we have a remote desktop which is loaded, and you can see IAConnect is automatically launched on logon in the top left-hand corner. So IAConnect now acts as our bridge between the cloud RPA platform and the remote session. So a Win32 application is launched and logged on. And the various inputs which were gathered in ServiceNow are now entered into the application. We can now see an instance of Microsoft Word, again on the remote session, being launched, and all of the values grabbed from earlier are entered to complete the form. You'll also notice that on the IAConnect application that commands are sent back and forth between the executable as IAConnect processes the relevant instructions. Now that the form is complete, this is saved and converted to PDF format. And you'll now see, again remotely, an instance of Microsoft Outlook being launched on the remote session. And a PDF copy of the document is then emailed as an attachment. So this is very good for things like audit purposes. ServiceNow ticket is then updated and closed accordingly. So just to recap, so the challenge that we've been presented with earlier is around information security with cloud RPA solutions. The fact that onboarding has a long list of steps which has to be addressed, the difficulty in automating over RDP or Citrix protocols, and also the low reliability around service automation when automating over RDP or Citrix sessions. The wish, or the happy path, as we'd like to call it, is really around making sure that we can automate over RDP or Citrix. This actually solves the info security challenge of cloud RPA, and it generally makes information security teams very happy. This is quite a difficult thing to achieve when faced. But we are pleased to say that we do have a solution, and IAConnect allows you to easily and reliably automate over RDP and Citrix. Thank you for your time. I hope you found the information useful. This now concludes the webinar. If you do have any further questions or would like more information on our solution, please feel free to get in touch.